Hello friends, welcome back to the DeClerc Homestead. Today I'm going to share my top 5 favorite homesteading books. Every single person should have these on their shelf. But before I get into them, I just want to make a quick kind of declaration about your preparedness. And if you are not keeping printed resources available at your homestead, I highly recommend doing so as soon as possible, because you never know when a situation might arise where you need to know how to do something, and taking the time to wade through the internet, or maybe not even having access to the internet, isn't the best backup plan. So hopefully some of the ideas that I give you today will help spark some urgency to get some resources on hand and take some time to look through them during the winter months when you have, a little bit slower schedule. So to start off, The Butchering Book by Adam Danforth. This is honestly probably the number one book that I think anybody should have, even if you do not plan to do butchering on your homestead. The reality is that sometimes you get put in situations where you don't have a choice and you have to do it, or you are just giving up and losing an entire animal. If a pig breaks a leg, or a cow gets sick, or a chicken, something happens and you have to butcher, or you lose it. And this book is so incredibly thorough, not with just like how to actually do the butchering of different animals, but it talks about different tools and knives and food safety and the, biology and science behind aging your meat. It's just jam-packed, and it's something that we reference all of the time. There is like a hard crease, especially in the chapter on butchering pigs, because Tommy uses it every single year as a reference guide for where he needs to make his cuts to break down the halves into primals and then subprimals. And it's just so interesting, so well organized and written. And honestly, the pictures are what really give you the confidence to go in and do it. Now, he does have a second book, which is all about how to do beef. We also have that one as well, and we've used it. But for anything from a pig to a deer to all poultry and rabbits, this is an excellent resource to have on hand. It tells you everything that you absolutely need to know. So, highly recommend Adam Danforth's Butchering Book. It's been a game changer for us and everybody else that we have recommended it to. Now, the next one along the lines of food preservation is the Ball Blue Book. Now, this one's my grandma's, so it's missing its cover. It's super old. The newer versions are a lot nicer looking, but I think it's important to have something canning related on your shelf that's just going to give you a summary of the processing time for any vegetable, fruit, meat. I'm not worried so much about having like fancy recipes as much as I am just knowing how long do I need to process something to have it be safely shelf stable. Because again, if you get in an emergency or an urgent situation where your freezer died because the power is out and you can't go online to see how long you have to process the ground beef that's thawing out in order for it to be shelf stable, having something that you can quick reference is super important. So you don't have to have a fancy canning book, just something that has a summary of all the different, main items and their processing times. Now, the next book would be naturally a cooking book, because what are you going to do with this food after you've preserved it? And Nourishing Traditions was definitely the original, like, whole food based book that I ever got. And I actually don't reference it as much as I should, but it is just full of not only like recipes, but it's also like the nutrition and the basis of all of the ingredients that go into the recipes. So it talks about raw milk, it talks about bone broth, it talks about all of those deep aspects of our nutrient dense diets, and then gives you creative recipes for how to actually make meals out of them. So if you don't have a copy of Nourishing Traditions, it's definitely a staple for anybody that is health conscious to have on their shelf. It's a great learning tool, but also just having some type of printed recipes so that way you don't have to rely on, again, looking something up online or trying to remember it just from previous efforts. It makes it a lot easier. Now, this next one you can see is Seen Better Days. This was actually the first homestead-based book that we ever actually bought. We used to go to the bookstore all the time and look through books, and this is the first one we actually ever purchased ourselves. And it is a great option to have on your shelf because it gives such a wide variety of information. Even though I would consider it kind of like base level, basic information, there's a lot to be learned in here. There are everything from buying property, laying it out. There's things about using different energy sources, so wood, solar, wind, all of those. Talks about gardening, talks about raising livestock, talks about preservation, talks about different, handicrafts and skills. So it's a really interesting book, and we definitely pull it out from time to time just to kind of get new ideas for different facets of our homestead that we maybe haven't started developing yet to kind of use as a starting point. Last but not least, this is kind of my wild card book, and this is You Can Farm by Joel Salatin. You've probably heard his name. This is my favorite book from him, maybe because it's the first one we ever owned, but it is something that I will always keep on hand, not because it necessarily goes deep into the how-to of farming, but it's such a great resource for how to kind of have the mindset of running a farm, how to set up your farm in a way that is holistic and kind of complementing each other, and really just all of the background work that it takes to build something from nothing, because they started with, yes, a lot of property, but very, very poor quality property, and they've grown it to something incredible, but they were bootstrapping the whole way. They were definitely working at the bare minimum. So I appreciate rereading it often just to kind of reset my mindset and spark my creativity, because they had to do that. They had to use a lot of creativity when they started their farm many, many decades ago. So those are my top 5 books. Again, I had a butchering one, I had a cooking one, I had a canning preservation one, a general homestead skills, and then more of an inspirational management background one. But I would love to know, what are some of your favorite homesteading books? Any of them that you would recommend I have on my shelf? Leave them in the comments below, and I will put a full list of all of the book titles, authors, and links to them in the description of this video. If there's any that you saw that you think that you want to snag and add to your shelf. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'll talk to you guys later.